This is News Guardian. News Guardian with Greg Aldridge and Chip Tarbutton on WFJX Fox Radio 910.
Good morning. It's us. We're back. Hope you had a great weekend.
Yes, it was great. It was fantastic.
Yeah?
It was beautiful. We're back.
The weather was weird out on the mountain.
Really?
Like you would leave town, and as you got to the edge of the mountain, it would start to be foggy, and the cloud bank started at the mountain's edge. It was as if the mountains outside of Roanoke were like a dividing line between a high and low pressure system, and we had two completely different weather patterns going on, and it was just very eerie seeing these low hanging clouds and the fog everywhere, like some strange horror film.
Ooh, it has some spooky music because my spooky music's not very good.
Wow. Well, in the last few days, a lot has happened.
Yes.
It's just amazing. You know, if a lot happens from one day to the next, boy, you let a weekend happen, and, well, politicians know if you're going to do stuff that's controversial and it's going to cause a problem, you do it on a weekend because the news cycles are over, and they get very little coverage, which is probably what emboldened our president to trade a Taliban sympathizer for 5 battle-hardened terrorists from Guantanamo.
Well, that story is, of course, there's so much wrong with the story.
Yeah, that you can hardly get the words out.
But ultimately, it's not going to matter because nothing's going to happen. There'll be some strongly worded press releases from Republican lawmakers who will decry the fact that the president broke the law. He broke the law. I mean, they just changed the law last year.
Again.
I mean, for the 34,000th time he's broken some law. And there'll be a strongly worded press release. You'll talk about him not upholding his constitutional oath.
And they'll continue to refuse to remove him from office, which you know, it's not just an ability that Congress has. It's a responsibility. Not an ability, a responsibility.
There's an election coming up this year. We can't remove the president of an election. We'll look horrible. We'll look very partisan, and that wouldn't help us in the election.
It's not about who looks like what. It's about right and wrong.
Oh gosh, you're right and wrong stuff. But you're right. I mean, it's maddening. I mean, this is the actual words from a source from the senior administration official speaking on conditions of anonymity about acknowledging the law was not followed in regards to this prisoner swap. Due to a near-term opportunity to save Sergeant Bergdahl's life, we moved as quickly as possible, the official said. The administration determined that given these unique circumstances and exigent circumstances, such a transfer should go forward, notwithstanding the notice requirement.
Well, he used the word there that's actually in the law that says that's what has to happen for the president to do this without the approval of Congress. So as long as you use the word, it doesn't matter if it applies. He said the right thing. And if Congress really wanted to stop the president from doing it, why did they give him an out clause to doing it anyway?
Well, the law didn't give him an out clause before. So Congress agreed to give him the out clause, and now they're complaining that he took the out clause.
Gee. They're just doing that because they hope that the Republicans probably hope they'll get their guy in the Oval Office next time, and then he'll be able to do it too.
But they're so shocked and appalled that he would. I mean, they just passed the law in January.
That's the first rule of responding to something in politics. What is the first rule to responding to something in politics? What's your response supposed to be? Righteous indignation. It's the law. Morton Blackwell's 20 rules of political messaging. Number 1. When your opponent does something you want to make hay out of, righteous indignation is your policy.
Well, the other thing that's funny about this story, and it's not really funny, well, there's two things. First of all, just a few weeks ago with the girls that were kidnapped in Niger, the administration was all on its high horse about not negotiating with terrorists. I mean, seriously, it was all, we don't negotiate with terrorists. That's the policy of the United States government. We don't negotiate with terrorists. You should negotiate with terrorists. Never negotiate with the terrorists. What do?
Look, these are politicians. What they have said in the past doesn't matter. What they are saying now is always the purpose of what they're saying now is to get away with what they're doing, and it doesn't have any bearing on anything they've ever said or anything they ever will say. And honestly, often it has no bearing on the law, the Constitution, or their authority. It's just what we're going to have to get used to. Because you know why? Because we're at war. Well, they're at war, and we're not. So we're just going to have to get used to getting our butts kicked.
So, according to the two officials told the AP when this soldier was captured, that he just walked off his base with 3 Afghans after a shift. He had no body armor or weapons and said there was no explanation to why he left. The Taliban said they found him in the woods drunk. And Bergdahl says he was on a patrol and he got left behind.
Who knows?
So,
and who cares?
Well, the bottom line is the guy is we just broke the law, violated our own policy about negotiating with terrorists for a guy who basically got drunk and went off and went AWOL.
Well, maybe we don't know what he did or didn't do.
Yeah.
And what difference does it make? We're all going to wake up tomorrow in a police state anyway. So what?
Well, plus, on top of all that, this is great timing because the president is about to sign an executive order to regulate greenhouse gases and force every industry in America to reduce their carbon emissions by 30%. With no congressional, I mean, he has no authority to do any of that stuff. But while the left hand's over here arguing about whether or not we should give this guy, we should have negotiated a deal, the right hand's over here violating the Constitution in another place.
I don't think they're even that calculated in this stuff. I think they're just doing whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want, and obviously nobody's going to stop them. Why should he care?
Exactly.
Why in the world should it bother him to do anything he wants to do, regardless of how illegal it is, if nobody's going to stop him?
Or is the title of the article on newsguardians.com, what does it matter? Because it doesn't matter, because they're not going to do anything. And he's going to, in the next time something comes up where he can violate the law and do what he wants to do, he'll just do it because, well,
he's been doing it.
And he can do it, and he gets away with it, and they let him get away with it, so there you go. But there's an election this year, so we elect more Republican congressmen, then they can not do anything.
The Republicans that are now saying we're not going to try to repeal Obamacare.
Oh, yeah. We're just going to fix it.
Oh, my gosh. Well, we're coming up on the first break. Some stories we're going to talk about today, some very interesting stuff. Morgan Griffith, if you recall, Congress Morgan Griffith introduced a medical marijuana bill a few weeks ago. Well, a week ago, there was an amendment offered to a VA bill that would have allowed VA doctors to talk about medical marijuana with the patients at the VA. And how do you think Morgan Griffith voted on that? Being a supporter of medical marijuana.
Well, I know the answer, so I'm not going to answer.
Okay. He voted against the amendment. We'll talk about why. Also, we think we figured out why the glossy women's fashion / lifestyle magazines in the grocery store are why people read them, why people pick them up and look at them. We're going to tell you about that. We're going to talk about Festival in the Park. Yes, the incumbents won the Roanoke City Council election, and they're running the city. And it's been a week, and the city still can't tell us if they made any money on Festival in the Park. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about the dangers of talking about your family on the internet, which a lot of people know about that. A lot of people know, you don't talk about going on vacation on the internet before you go on vacation because you're telling predators out there your house is going to be empty and available to break into. But have you thought about the danger of those little stick people family figures on the back of your car? I'll bet you haven't. But this one goes out to Megan this morning, who I was talking with about this over the weekend, and she requested that I tell everybody on the radio about the dangers of the stick figure families on the back of people's cars. So all of that when we return to News Guardians. In the meantime, if you want to read the stories we're talking about, go to newsguardians.com, hit the donate button, because freedom ain't free. We'll be right back.
News Guardians on Fox Radio 910.
It's very dangerous.
Well, there's lots of things that applies to, Greg. What's very dangerous?
Talking about personal things on the internet and social media about your family. Pictures, vacation plans, all the intimate details. It's like giving the perps all the information they need to run an operation on you and make a victim out of you. But that's not exactly what we're going to talk about here. What we're going to talk about are the stick people figures that people put of their families on the back of their cars.
Yes, I've seen those many times.
Well,
why is that dangerous, Greg?
Well,
you're not a very trusting soul, are you?
I'm not a very trusting soul. Just, generally, there are people I trust, but I don't just trust people in general. I mean, obviously, should you look out the window? It's dangerous to trust that.
Well, obviously, there's always been a philosophical argument about the basic nature of man, whether man is basically good or basically not good.
Well, true, but I'm talking about certain people are just bad.
Well,
it's just the way it is.
Yes, I mean, I believe people are basically good. Well, why do you lock your car door when you go to the mall? Well, some people are bad. Well, how many? Well, enough that you want to lock your car door when you go to the mall. So
yeah. At any rate, when you put those stickers on the back, mom and pa and son and your 2 daughters and the cat. Okay. Now, on the silly end of that, you could say, well, if you see that there and a perp's going to break into your house, he knows you don't have a dog. So from that sticker, he can be relatively confident he's not going to encounter a dog which is going to be acting as a guard dog and become a problem in victimizing you. I mean, and that's kind of on the mild end. But what you've told them with those stickers is everybody they need to find in that house and round up while breaking in to victimize you. So if you've got a master plan of how the children can hide in the house and not be found, a perp coming in who doesn't know how many children there are, what kind of children there might be, it's a lot harder for that particular perpetrator to round up the family when they really don't know what the family consists of. But if you're going to give them a roadmap to your family in the form of stick figure stickers on the back of your car, you've told them who they have to find to make sure they get everybody. This seems dangerous to me.
Okay.
However, I am considering marketing my own line of stick figure family people to put on the back of your car.
Are they all packing?
Yes! Dad, it's stick figures with stick figure weapons. Dad's got an AK-47. Ma's got a shotgun. Son has a hunting rifle. The 2 daughters are got .22 caliber target pistols. And the cat is carrying a grenade.
Do you trust your cats with a grenade? I wouldn't trust your cat with a grenade.
I don't trust a cat with anything. But the point is, imagine the perp that walks up on
That's
that.
dangerous, a cat with a grenade.
Imagine the perp that walks up on that when breaking into the garage to get into your house and sees, holy crap, this family is armed to the teeth. They're going to pick another house. So I'm thinking about copywriting those stickers and selling them as a safer way to display your family and stick figure stickers on the back of your car. What do you think?
I like the gun. Not only is it as a safer way to do it, I think it's kind of funny.
Or maybe one of the daughters will have a machete.
No, I think just pistols and rifles and shotguns will do good. I think for the gun owning family, I think that I know some families that would think that was a hoot and probably would buy that. I think you stumbled onto a marketing idea that could make you some money.
Did I?
I think you have.
And I just said it on the radio, so out there somebody right now is filling out copyright forms.
You broke your own rules about sharing private information. Now somebody else is good. Now you'll see on.
Contrary to popular belief, I'm not selfish, so it's fine. At any rate, people, please be careful. Understand that the sharing of personal information about your family online and publicly like that is dangerous. Be careful. I don't want you to be a victim. I don't want your families to be victims. I mean, we're making light and a joke of this, but it's a very serious matter, and I would prefer that you be safe. I want our extended family out there to be as safe as possible. That's really what this is all about. That's your public service announcement for.
Thank you, Greg. Can you give us a golf clap on that?
I could try. Let's see here. I wasn't prepared for a golf clap, but we'll see how fast I can. Here you go. Okay. I'd like to apologize to all the people that work at the Water Authority who evidently were upset because I wouldn't let Al talk last week as much as they wanted to. So sorry, guys. I know Al's a star, you know.
You were in rare form.
And you can listen to if you wonder what we're talking about. Yeah, you're right. I went back and played that show for my dad over the weekend, and he almost choked laughing so hard. So the first half of that, you don't need to listen to the second half of the show. The first 22 minutes will do it, and it was pretty funny. And Al finally figured out, what we were doing and got right in there and he had some pretty funny one-liners jabbing back at me. It was great. It was very entertaining. If you didn't get to hear it, go to newsguardians.com, click the radio archives, and listen to last Tuesday's show. It's the most recent one posted, and it's a hoot. In fact, we should just play it this morning, and we can go on. I
don't know.
No, because we want to talk about the budget.
The budget?
The state budget is this is hilarious. We want to talk about the fact that the city a week later still doesn't know how much money they took in for Festival in the Park. Seriously. And
it takes a lot of time to count the money, Greg.
And we know, we think we figured out why people are attracted to those women's fashion and lifestyle magazines at the grocery store. Why people pick those up. We're going to talk about that later on. I
have a theory, but we'll talk about it later.
You do?
Sure.
Cool.
But I'm sure your theory and my theory won't comport.
So in the meantime, let's talk about pot.
Oh, what kind of pots? Like, a stew pot?
No, we're going to talk about the cheap.
Wow. You're so
I'm trying to use some lingo this morning. Well, I studied up on this.
Wow.
There are a lot of names for marijuana out there. Did you know that?
Yeah, I've heard of them a few times. So.
If you watch, I watched some movies.
Wow, you're going crazy.
I watched What's It Go to White Castle. I can't remember the title.
Harold and Kumar.
And if you ever wanted to know 50 ways to say marijuana without saying marijuana, that's the film that'll teach it to you.
The Chronic.
The Chronic, yes, the Chronic. Mary Jane.
Yes.
At any rate,
pot.
So, in all seriousness, if you recall, we had this story. It's on newsguardians.com a few weeks ago. We interviewed Congressman Morgan Griffith because he was introducing a medical marijuana bill. And what his bill would do would be to reclassify marijuana in the FDA code, regs, so that doctors would be able to prescribe it and they could do research on it. And this would allow people, legally to use its medicinal purposes for patients in need. But an interesting thing happened. About a week ago, Congressman Rohrbacher,
yes,
offered an amendment to a veterans bill. And what this amendment would do would be to go ahead and allow doctors in the VA system to talk to patients, wounded veterans, talk to patients about the benefits for certain ailments of marijuana. Now, coming on the heels of Morgan Griffith coming on the heels of Morgan Griffith introducing a bill about medical marijuana, how would you expect Morgan Griffith to vote on that?
Yes.
Right. Wouldn't that make sense? Now, Congressman Bob Goodlatte voted no.
Why is that?
I guess because if the last thing in the world that can make a wounded veteran's life survivable for what days he has left is prescription marijuana, Bob Goodlatte doesn't want him to have it.
Well, I don't. But I'm a little surprised that Griffith voted against that.
Well,
I mean, because usually I don't always agree with Griffith's votes, but he tends to at least. If he votes something I don't agree with, he tends to write a press release to explain why he did it.
He did, and I looked up the press release because I was very interested when somebody told me about this. First off, Morgan says he knew that this would be a hard vote to explain. And And basically, what in his explanation, he says this would allow VA doctors to talk to veteran patients about the benefits of marijuana, which is not allowed currently. Now, he says that the drug should be legal nationally before clearing VA doctors to recommend it, because you would be encouraging veterans to commit a felony. That's his rationale, is that we don't want to make it legal for the veterans because then they would be doing something illegal. Does that make any sense? Does this make any sense to you whatsoever?
Not really.
We'll see if we can make sense of it. We come back from the break, and we've got some local stories to talk about. State story, the budget has just gone off the deep end, and it's a hoot how this is being used to explain how we should further indebt ourselves to the Medicaid system, according to Democrats. All that when we return to News Guardians on Fox Radio 910.
This is News Guardian. News Guardian with Greg Aldridge and Chip Tarbun on WFJX Fox Radio 910.
Welcome back.
Back.
Listen to
Worse
News
than ever.
Guardians.
Are you okay?
It's just for medicinal purposes only.
Oh, okay. So you're...
Man, it stinks in the booth.
You're simulating... You're sitting here. I'm drinking a Diet Dr. Pepper. And you've got a cup of coffee. And you're making it sound like it's a Cheech and Chong film in here. What is wrong with you?
I'm just so amused by Morgan Griffith's logic on this. It's just.
Well, my knees are kind of cruddy, and like I said, I've been trying to play basketball. And first of all, I'm 48, and I shouldn't be as bad a shape as I'm in. But when I'm playing with a bunch of older guys, I should be able to dominate because I'm tall enough and a good enough player that I should be scoring like every time I touch the ball. But by the time I play about 5 minutes, I'm winded and my knees are aching. So maybe
you lost me at I'm 48.
Well, so I'm maybe medicinal marijuana might be my answer for trying to curb the knee pain I have. So I should go there stoned. Is that the answer to my basketball problem?
You're from Hawaii. Now,
I was born in Hawaii.
Do you have a sexy Hawaiian birth certificate like our president does that proves you're 48?
Funny story. Want to hear a funny story about my birth? So when the whole...
Wait a second. Go ahead.
Dude. Let me just reassure the listening audience that Greg is not smoking marijuana at this time, and I have no. That's not my bag, baby.
I told you every day that I wake up in tyranny, this is the Greg you're going to get.
What the pretending to smoke pot while you drink coffee, Greg?
No, the ballistic 24/7 Greg.
Well, we're glad to have you. So
thank you.
It's a funny story about my birth certificate.
I just want people to laugh, but let's hear your story.
So at the height of the President Obama scandal or question about his birth certificate, I was born in Hawaii. My parents were in the military, and they moved to the States when I was about 3. And I needed to get a passport for a trip I was going to take. And I could not find my passport. I found my passport, but it had been mangled. My birth certificate. So I had to call Hawaii and get a new copy of my birth certificate. And I expected it to be a big hassle, but it was like, oh, no sweat, no problem. $10, we'll send it to you. Like, that's great. So a couple weeks later, I get a letter from Hawaii, with my birth certificate. And really, all it was a piece of paper with from a laser printer saying, yeah, you're from Hawaii. Have a nice day. I'm like, well, if it's this easy to get a birth certificate, I'm sure President Obama had no problem getting one too. So I can understand how he got a birth certificate from Hawaii, because either A, they're that lax, or B, after what happened with President Obama, they decided to make it lax so they could make sure no one asked any questions about it. Because I have a really cheesy birth certificate from Hawaii on green paper.
Wow. I love that story.
I'm glad you do.
Well, and so it's no mystery that Barack's backstory to covering for the fact he probably wasn't born in the United States is that, yeah, I'm from Hawaii. So you just call down there, they push out something on a laser printer, and viola, he's eligible to be president.
Viola? Isn't that like a kind of violin?
I think voila. It's
Yeah.
the French pronunciation is voila.
Viola,
You like that better? So Griffith said drugs, or marijuana specifically, should be legal nationally before clearing VA doctors to recommend it.
I thought about that during the break, and that's not the worst argument anybody's ever made for something.
Well, understand, though, that there are 22 states now that allow medical marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
So in those 22 states, you wouldn't be breaking state law. And if Congress passes this for veterans, then technically you're not breaking federal law anywhere in the country because Congress just changed the law for veterans. So his argument that we're encouraging them to commit a felony doesn't hold water because you've eliminated that from being a felony.
It's still technically, I think he wants everybody to have access to medical marijuana versus just veterans.
So since when has compromise, as taking baby steps towards a goal, not been good enough for Republican lawmakers? Now all of a sudden, you can't go meet somebody halfway and get there.
With him. I just say I see the logic in it. When you first said it, I kind of scratched my head, but I see where he's coming from. I mean, I don't disagree with the. In a perfect world, he's probably right, but in the world we live in, with half the states that have already basically openly flaunting the federal law and no one doing anything about it, what difference does it make?
Well, and if nobody's going to do anything about any of this, then it doesn't make any difference.
Right.
You're just going to wake up to what you're going to get.
This is a nullification.
Live with it, people.
This is state. I mean, it's a shame with all the things that are happening in the world today that pot laws are the only thing that are the most effective example of modern day state nullification. It's just that they're too stoned to do anything, and no one feels like messing with them because all they're doing is eating Doritos and playing video games in their basement. So,
well, at least it would keep all the hippies out of politics. I mean, think about it. If people look, this goes out to the conservatives and the Republicans and those people out there. If you want to keep the leftists docile so they're not out there fighting politics and messing things up for us, then let them get stoned. They'll be like, gee, I could go out and petition Congress and wave signs and cause trouble today, but
or you get baked and
or I could get baked and eat Cheetos. Think I'll smoke pot and eat Cheetos and forget politics. Who cares?
There's a new video game out, and that's awesome.
Honestly, there's the constituency group from them on the legalization issue has been around for decades. If you just gave them that thing, they'd probably go away, and then the adults, the rest of us, could maybe able to start fixing all these problems without them interjecting. Now, I'm partially kidding there, because honestly, I would be considered one of those people, not because I have this intense need
to smoke weed,
to be a burner. I have this intense need for government not to be forcing things on us that it doesn't have the authority to. So I'm with them on the issue of whether the government has the authority. And libertarians are also there. So, I mean, it is a joke that everybody who's on that side of the issue is all just a bunch of potheads, because that's not true. So just state for the record here, that's just in jest. This is just me trying to make people laugh because I'm normally too serious. That's what I get criticized for, is not being lighthearted enough sometimes. So that was my attempt at the lighthearted activity.
That was lighthearted.
Thank you. Thank you. So, if you were running a festival.
I smell pot?
Yeah, speaking of pot, if you were running an outdoor festival.
Or segue into a different conversation.
How long would it take you to tally up the gate receipts and the ticket receipts and the receipts from charging people for having booths at your festival?
Well, I would think if it ended late, perhaps the next day.
How long do you think it takes Roanoke City to do that?
Probably an indeterminate amount of time.
Yeah, we're on day 7. And according to the Roanoke Times, Roanoke still doesn't know how much money they took in on Festival in the Park, which was a week ago.
Well, they have some outstanding debt or something.
Well, they say they've paid the big bills. The bands have been paid. The beer guy has been paid. But they haven't paid all the other stuff yet. Oh, and they've paid Stage Sound, who provided lighting and sound for the concerts. But they still haven't figured out what the total costs are. And have they never heard of Excel? It's pretty simple. Like when you're putting together some sort of event, you create columns in Excel for your expenses and columns in Excel for your receipts, and then you throw the numbers in there as you get them, and then once it's all said and done, you hit, you do a little formula that subtracts one from the other, and you either get a positive number or a negative number, and you know whether you won or lost money. How long could that possibly have taken?
Well, even if you haven't paid some of the smaller vendors, you still know how much you owe them, right?
Well, you would think. Unless you're running a city the lax way that our city council allows our city to run, which is there's no accountability for anything, evidently. Or, let me pose an alternate reason why.
Ooh.
They don't want us to know because the news is not beneficial to them politically.
Well, and then you could just keep stalling and stalling, and then
until nobody cares.
Exactly, because that's the.
And then on a Saturday afternoon, there'll be a tiny little blurb in the Roanoke Times about how much they lost on an event 3 months ago when nobody cares anymore. And then if somebody like us brings it up, all of the people are just like, that was 3 months ago. You all are just bashing them because of politics. It's not a serious criticism.
Well, I mean, this is how politics works today. If when your GDP for the entire nation shrinks by 1% in a quarter, you blame it on the weather and say, "Oh, everything's gonna be better next quarter. Don't worry about it." If the people in power are ones you like, if the people in power, if this was a Republican president, it would be the greatest tragedy in the history of mankind. Everybody just blew it off. Oh, it was bad weather. Weather caused the entire economy to shrink by 1%.
They had great weather for Festival in the Park.
Yeah.
And they're touting the fact that they had more people come through the gate. They sold more tickets to the concerts. Everything was up. And except you get to the question of, well, then how much money did you make?
Well,
we don't know.
If they didn't do a very good job of managing their money, they may not have made
We don't
money.
know. Yes, which is why there were 3 candidates for Roanoke City Council bringing up these issues weeks ago in the election. And a majority of Roanoke's voters voted to have an unaccountable mess for their Roanoke City government. So this is what you get.
Well, I'd rather have a party. That's what they're saying. I'd rather have a party downtown than
to be responsible.
Yeah.
I get that. So then why is it so hard to legalize marijuana if people would rather have a party?
Hey, I mean, let's just make it. This is party central, man. Everybody's all party all the time in America. We don't need responsibility. Responsibility's for losers. Let's get stoned, get drunk, go see a band, have fun.
I like going to see bands.
I do too.
I've even learned to like beer.
Well, congratulations, I'm proud of you.
I tried. It took years. I tried really hard. I was finally able to learn to like beer.
I'm glad you worked on something so. I'm glad you worked so hard on finding something so necessary.
When I was in college, I tried to learn to like smoking. I tried real hard to be a smoker. Did you smoke in college?
I did. Cigarettes.
Were you a real right? Were you a real smoker though?
Yeah, for a while.
So you get out of a tough test, and you had to have a smoke when you got outside.
Yeah, for about 2 years, and then they got when poverty broke in, I had to choose between beer and cigarettes, and I chose
cigarettes
beer.
lost.
Yeah.
So when you drink beer, didn't it make you want a cigarette?
Oh yeah, but then my willpower kicked in, and I was
I tried.
It, so.
I tried to become a smoker like all of my friends in college, and I just couldn't do it. I never walked out of class thinking, "Oh God, gotta have that cigarette," or woke up in the morning and the first thing you need is a cigarette to start your day. So I finally just gave up.
But just look cool in a bar. It's like you have something to do with your hands. You smoke, you drink, you look kind of cool.
We went to those bars where you played trivia with other people in the bar on satellite, a little box. They give you a little trivia box.
Yeah.
Those were cool.
Yeah,
so that was something
Buffalo Wild Wings.
That was something to do with your hands.
Yeah, that's not as cool as...
They still have that?
That's kind of, yeah. Yeah, they do. It's kind of nerdy.
Before we go to our next break, we should talk about our friends over at Bramilton Frames.
Yeah, we should. They did a nice job on your framing job.
They absolutely did. And if you've got framing needs, if you got posters or art, or maybe you've changed colors or redecorated your house and you need to change the color matting on some of your artwork, or you've got those graduation photos, because your senior just graduated from high school or college, or perhaps your fifth grader got advanced to junior high. Whatever it is, if you're needing those important pictures framed or some wonderful artwork, Bramilton Framing, I can vouch for the quality of their work. I had them do a job for me, and it was fantastic. And no, he is not paying me to say this. I just want to talk about good people when they do good things and they do great work. And I think quality deserves being exalted. And so I want to do that for Bramilton Framing. If you're looking for them, they are on Bramilton Avenue, right across the street from Luigi's, like 100 yards down the road from Bramilton Imports that used to be Bramilton Car Wash. It's just a little tiny little brick building, but the guy, and there's a listener. We found out he listens to us on the radio. He's got our poster up in there. I guess, that is doing something for us, but that's not why I'm talking about him on the radio. That's why I took that piece of art in there to have him work on it. I'm talking about it because of the amazing job he did on that thing. At any rate, Bramilton Framing on Bramilton. It's a very convenient name.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Let him know that the News Guardian sent you so he can understand the power of radio. Everyone needs to know the power of having a radio audience. Or, of getting high. I'm just trying to get a rise out of you. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about the busting of the state budget.
Who cares?
And why people pick up, read, look at those women's fashion / lifestyle magazines from the grocery store. When we return to News Guardians on Fox Radio 910.
News Guardians on Fox Radio 910.
To him that way, of course. I will be friendlier and more conciliatory in my language because I just want to get along, ultimately, right? Isn't that all Greg wants, is just to get along?
Wow. That was a nice segue from a conversation that had nothing to do with what we're talking about on the radio. I was like, are we live?
Are you sure I wasn't really smoking pot earlier?
I'm starting to question that. I know I haven't seen you do anything, but what you did before I got here, because I got here about 7:30, so I don't know. And I didn't smell any, unless you were doing it outside.
It's not the pot, really. I shouldn't have drank all that cough syrup.
Stripes, 1982, I think.
So the state budget. Where do you begin with this? And we got 4.5 minutes left before the end of the show. So we'd like to thank everybody for listening this morning. I remind you, tomorrow, of course, we'll have Al Bedrosian as a guest here on the show with us to talk about what's going on in Roanoke County. Wednesday, I think we'll have News Guardian Elizabeth. On Thursday, Mike is on vacation, so I'm going to be in instead of Mike. So you'll have Chip and Greg on Thursday and Friday this week. So that's the week up on News Guardians, and then Saturday is the Republican convention to nominate who will be the Republican nominee for United States Senate. We'll be right here in Roanoke this Saturday.
Your News Guardianship will be there.
You're going to cover it.
I'm going to cover it.
You got press credentials.
I have press credentials.
You're official.
Yes. I do have a bias.
Yeah, but you'll be honest about it, won't you?
Yeah, like Tony.
You want Tony to win.
Yeah, I want Tony to win.
I think I want Tony to win, too.
I mean, he's definitely the underdog, but I definitely want Tony to win. I mean, I like some of the other candidates, particularly Shaq. I think is a pretty good candidate. But
I want Tony to win or not Ed Gillespie.
Pretty much. That sums it up pretty nicely.
So anyway, the state budget. Now, for those of you who need a quick background, they've been trying to push this idea of expanding the Medicaid system on us for a long time because the feds are going to give us the money to pay for most of it, and they're trying to sell us on the idea that this influx of money, this billions of dollars that the influx that we're going to have into our state is going to be an economic boon for us. And the people that are pushing that are ignoring the fact that we become responsible for an ever-increasing percentage of that cost, and that there are no guarantees we won't end up responsible for all of it at some point after we have gotten people dependent on it.
The agreement's only for 2 or 3 years.
Right. So they've been telling us, don't worry about that financial thing. It's not going to hurt our budget because we're fiscally strong. Virginia's in great shape.
AAA bond rating.
Yeah. Well, as it turns out, that's not true.
Well, first of all, they're coming up over the next 2 years over $1 billion, closing on $1.5 billion short for the next 2-year budget cycle. And at first, when this came up, everybody was like, don't worry about it. The state always works it out, blah, blah, blah. But bottom line is they're going to have to make drastic cuts to somewhere in the budget to make this happen.
Not draconian cuts.
Draconian. Which, of course, all the state, I mean, Roanoke County just passed a budget, right? And even Al was like, it's no big deal. We'll get the money. Well, maybe not, because now they're going to cut $500 million to $600 million from your budget. Some of that might come out of what you expected to get from the state, and then your budget's not worth is going to have to be revised based on what the state's providing to the localities.
Well, in fairness to Al voted against it. Al thought it was wrong. I think what Al was just saying it's probably going to be okay, but it's the wrong thing to do. I don't think he was saying, don't worry about it.
I'm not blaming Al,
right.
but I mean, everybody's been downplaying this and been telling him to downplay it. But now all of a sudden, this is a crisis. And I'm beginning to think maybe this is a tactic by the Democrats, because if it's bad enough crisis, the lure of taking that Medicaid money in the short term might be more appealing to people.
So just a few short weeks ago, our budget was so strong we could handle the burden of Virginia's part of expanding Medicaid. Now, Virginia's economy is so weak that we have to expand Medicaid because of the part of the money that the feds are going to give us.
The bond rating is in jeopardy.
Are they forgetting about the portion we have to pay? It's so funny. But this is par for the course that it doesn't matter how things are. It's an excuse for them getting what they want.
Bond ratings in jeopardy. That's the new. That always seems to work.
If temperatures are rising, it's global warming. If temperatures are falling, it's global warming.
It's climate change. Just change the name a little bit.
This is just ridiculous. It's just the never-ending ridiculousness that is leftist politics.
Well, again, it's threatening the state bond rating seems to be the most effective way to do this. But in all honesty, they've got a rainy day fund, which is has $600 million in it that they're probably going to end up wanting to use to make up for the budget shortfall, and because everything's going to get better next quarter, of course. But they can't legally do that unless they have a budget passed. So they got to pass a budget somehow to dip into the rainy day fund, where they've been taking your tax money and stashing it in a bank account somewhere.
People, you need to be paying attention to this, because what turned out is just a procedural fight and messaging fight back and forth between the Democrats and the Republicans has now gotten serious over the fact that our state is going belly up. Essentially, things are all not rosy like they tried to tell us, and we're not the best managed state in the country like they were trying to tell us either. We have fiscal issues. You're going to have to pay attention. You're going to have to get involved, and you're going to have to help deal with this problem, or they're going to take us down the toilet.
I don't want to be taken down the toilet or flushed either.
I'm Greg.
I'm Chip.
We'll see you all tomorrow right here on News Guardians, Fox Radio 910.
This is the Dan Patrick Show.
He's a great man. You're looking at this Cleveland situation, and it must be toxic. Now you would take Rob Chudzinski. Like do you do a do-over and say, Rob, man, on second thought, come on back. Can't find anybody for the job. It's just a mess. Oh, boy.
Dan Patrick.
Weekdays, noon to 2 on Fox Radio 910.
When I grow up, I want to be a new pair of blue jeans.
When I grow up, I want to be a kid's first computer.
I want to be a warm place on a cold day.
Football
I want to
stadium.
be a bike that races around the country.
I want to be a bench on a forest trail.
When I grow up, I don't want to be a piece of garbage. And if you recycle me, I won't be.
Give your garbage another life. Recycle. Learn how at iwanttoberecycled.org. Brought to you by Keep America Beautiful and the Ad Council.
This is Dennis Miller. Join me weeknights on WFJX Roanoke. We are Fox Radio 910.
Fox News Radio. I'm Dave Anthony. Bo Bergdahl's mom tells him,
give yourself all of the time you need to recover and decompress. There is no hurry.
He's now in Germany after his release, nearly 5 years after the Army sergeant was captured walking away from the U.S. base in Afghanistan. The prisoner swap for him has sparked a big debate. Fox News Radio's Jill Nato live in Washington.
The White House says they needed a deal in a hurry. There were concerns about Bergdahl's health, so they agreed to trade 5 Taliban detainees at Guantanamo for Bergdahl. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel.
This was a prisoner of war